Welcome to Jahmi Rock's Jottings, your seriously silly space to hear deep insights on music, especially reggae and samba reggae. It is my intention to share meaningful musicological arguments and observations to inspire and, frankly, pass my doctoral exams. Welcome all. I'm your host, Jahmi Rock, aka Racquel Bernard. Let's start jamming. Come with me and hear the words of the legendary Buju Banton. There was good and evil. We chose good. Ra raised the time of the Most High, his sons of men. The rich man's wealth is in the city. Destruction of the poor is his poverty. Lord, destruction of your soul is vanity. Yeah, do you hear? Do you hear? I wanna rule my destiny. Yeah, I wanna rule my destiny. This week, we are diving into what I am calling treatises for liberation. I think about the conditions under which we try to rule our destiny in this current world and how popular songs like Banton's Destiny shed light on the trials and tribulations black folks face. On our scholar roster this week, we've got Charles Ham, Fungo Kiki Yankini, Kate Quinn, Laniqua Welcome, and David Walker. Charles Ham is a historian of American popular music, musicology, racial and ethnic dynamics, as well as oral and written traditions. As Charles Ham explains, in the preface of putting popular music in its place, the essays of the volume assume that 1. Popular music, like all music, is both an acoustical and a social phenomenon, and thus must be dealt with musically, though not necessarily at a technical level, as well as culturally. 2. One cannot fully understand the nature of a given musical event unless one is present at it or can reconstruct it from critical or historical documentation. And 3. Popular music has never existed in isolation from other types of music and is best considered in terms of its interaction with other genres, most certainly including classical repertory. In general terms, classical music, like classical literature, is that which has been recognized by the ages as the supposedly best and highest class. Thus, in common acceptance, classical is the antithesis to popular music. So Ham is here bringing up a ton of issues that you'll see within musicology. And if you check out my conversation with Nikki New of Argue Mad, you'll hear me talk a little bit more about the issues that go on within musicology. It's kind of over concern with classical music in the beginning years and what has been done in recent years to diversify the field and to change it. And part of that is really a turn to popular music. So my project, which looks at reggae and samba reggae, is directly flying in the face of this idea of classical music being understood as the best and highest class. For me, you can't mess with popular music. Popular music is the best, in my opinion, right? And part of why I am driven to work with black musics in the field of musicology is to continue diversifying a field that was preoccupied with white music, put plainly. The music of black women and black people more broadly stands to shake the foundations of musicology at its roots. And for me, this is part of me fulfilling my academic destiny. Destiny, mama look for when you call in. Destiny, mama look for when you call in. I wanna rule my destiny. Yeah. Oh, help I please. Jaja make me rule my destiny. I've been blessed, I've been touched. I love Jah so much. They keep fighting me. I'm not giving up. May the realms of Zion fill my spiritual cup. Wisdom overstanding must never be too much. Give I protection day and night. Guide me from the pestilence that walketh by daylight. Now, I delivered this song a little differently than Buju Banton does. I love this song, and I have done my own remixes of it in my own times where I felt like the world is fighting me. So my delivery is a little different. Don't get mad at me. But Banton's delivery makes me feel like I'm time traveling when I listen. This imagery of Zion indeed takes me back to the Old Testament times, or times that only feel almost as far in the past, right? The colonial times. And that brings me to David Walker. Now, David Walker was the writer of Walker's Appeal in 4 articles, together with a preamble to the colored citizens of the world, but in particular, and very expressly to those of the United States of America, written in Boston, state of Massachusetts, September 28th, 1829. This is a firmly colonial document meant for people of color across the world, but especially in the United States, right? It's a 19th century treatise. And it's important to note that the people who worked on this document's revision are women. So the revision of it and its uploading to the internet to be accessible to others, it was women who did that. All right. And David Walker, let me tell you about him. This man was a hustler, okay? According to the African American Registry Organization, Walker was born in Wilmington, North Carolina, to a slave father and a free mother. Walker grew up free, obtained an education, and traveled throughout the country, settling in Boston. He became involved in the abolitionist movement and was a frequent contributor to Freedom Journal, a anti-slavery weekly. Sometime in the 1820s, he opened a secondhand clothing store on the Boston waterfront. Through his business, he would purchase clothes taken from sailors in barter for a drink of alcohol, and then resell this clothes to seamen who were about to embark. He was a hustler, I'm trying to tell you. In this text, Walker often refers to the God of the Ethiopians and refers to Ethiopia as a site of black resistance. East, as Rastafari would say. The God of the Ethiopians is affirmed by Rastafari and ties to His Imperial Majesty, Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, descendant of King Solomon and Queen of Sheba. David Walker wrote this appeal 100 years before Haile Selassie became Emperor of Ethiopia. But I'll be darned if he does not sound very similar to Rastafari who chant down Babylon when he says, I appeal to heaven for my motive in writing, who knows that my object is, if possible, to awaken in the breasts of my afflicted, degraded, and slumbering brethren a spirit of inquiry and investigation, respecting our miseries and wretchedness in this Republican land of liberty. This spoke to my senior thesis that I wrote at Dartmouth, which considered the ways that Black Americans reimagined the Christian God as a being that did not approve of slavery, as slave owners tried to say, but instead turned him into a Christian God who would hear the cries of the oppressed and judge all those upholding the structure. Walker declared, God rules in the armies of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, having his ears continually open to the cries, tears, and groans of his oppressed people. And if this does not sound like a prediction of the Civil War, I don't know what does, okay? Liberation was Black people's destiny indeed. And with every move to liberate themselves, there often came a backlash of new reimagined oppressions that had to be dealt with again. Caribbean Studies and History scholar Kate Quinn researches Caribbean Black power, imperialism, slavery, capitalism, racism, and classism. I am moved by Quinn's words, Black government is not Black power. That is precisely why I have deep-seated hang-ups with the propping up of progress by Black visibility versus Black power. She explains, radical variants of Caribbean Black power thus always had a class dimension, right? I'm right now remembering and hearing the echoes of Dr. Donna P. Hope, who emphasized in one of my cultural studies seminars that I took while at the University of the West Indies, that the United States often frames oppression through racism as the lens, as the principal lens, right? But in Jamaica, this oppression is understood through a strict classism. So race and class operates differently in those two contexts. So that Black visibility in the government does not equal Black power. And even someone like the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. misunderstood this when he came to Jamaica and saw Black people in high political standing. Black visibility in Jamaica does not mean Black power. It means Black visibility because there's still a strict classism at work that is to be dealt with. Now, Kate Quinn's introduction to Black power in the Caribbean outlines the unequal socioeconomic conditions that most Caribbean countries had. Quinn, and still have, I'll add that, Quinn describes fishermen being pushed out of their areas with construction of resorts, right? Tourism is a huge issue. So those local fishermen who once made a living off of the coast are pushed away due to the construction of resorts. There's high unemployment for Black communities. There's unequal distribution of income during economic booms, right? And so are you hearing it now a little bit more when Banton sings, the rich man's wealth is in the city, yeah? Destruction of the poor is his poverty? Or as Protege would say, your sister poverty no real then, because all the fruit are dropping off of the tree them, right? As poverty is something that is constructed by classist structures. You feel me? Now let's jump on over, and I apologize that I'm spending so little time on each scholar this week. We just have so many. And the person who I'm going to next is a powerhouse out of Cameroon, okay? Fungo Kiniyen Kini. He was Dean of Faculty of Law at Bamenda University of Science and Technology. He had a BA in Philosophy, a BA in Theology, a Master's in Philosophy and Theology from the Pontifical Urbanian University of Rome, a Bachelor of Science in the Social Sciences from the International University of Social Sciences Prodeo in Rome. And I'm not done. And trust me, I have a lot more to say. An MSc in Anthropology with specialization in Industrial Anthropology from the University of Paris. And Master's in, or an MA rather, in History with specialization in Economic History, and a PhD in Anthropology from the University of Paris. An MSc in Political Science with specialization in International Relations, an LLM in International Law with specialization in Comparative International and African Law, and finally, a PhD in Political Science from the University of Paris. Okay, so learned, educated. Listen, very few people can come close to this powerhouse skinny, all right? He wrote a book called Pan-Africanism, Political Philosophy and Socio-Economic Anthropology for African Liberation and Governance, Caribbean and African American Contributions. Kinney's words touched my soul as he lauded the women who made Pan-Africanism what it became, saying, "It is true that African American women always participated in the various movements that gave birth and progress of the Pan-African movement. It is true, as mentioned, that they were also the movers and shakers of the policies and ideologies that moved Pan-Africanism forward. But it is also true that these women were never celebrated enough or given their rightful place in the pantheon of Pan-Africanism." You heard that, right? Women addressed the attendees as well as served on prominent committees. They were sponsors, organizers, supporters, and leaders, he says, quoting Salma Maulidi. Kinney writes, "Indeed, the faces and voices of Pan-Africanism tend to be male, black, mostly middle-aged, and located in academic institutions or think tanks." This introduction really spells out some of the reasons why my work focuses on women of color, especially Black women. I'm not doing it because I only care about Black women. I'm doing it because Black women have always prioritized the movement and have seldom been given the attention and recognition for their work. That is why I do gender and spirituality in post-colonial liberation musics. So when Kinney, this very educated Cameroonian powerhouse, has his introduction on this book of Pan-Africanism and lists the African American people, the Caribbean people, the African people who liberated themselves, and makes a comment like these, or makes comments like these, I have to listen, right? The introduction of the book is concerned with thinking through the neo-post-colonial Africa and capitalist racism and how these liberators confronted these structural evils. These structural issues ran deep, and they continue to run deep. They can often be laid bare in the face of environmental disaster, which is where Liniqua, and I am apologizing because I feel I'm saying that wrong. Lina, I feel I'm saying it wrong. And if there's somebody out there who knows how to say Liniqua Welcome's name properly and I'm saying it wrong, you shout me out because I don't want to mess it up. And I will come back on another episode and make sure I say it right next time. All right, Welcome is a multimodal anthropologist and designer from Trinidad and Tobago. Her research and teaching interests are post-colonial statecraft, racialization, gendering, securitization, visuality, and affect. Her work combines more traditional ethnographic methods with photography and collage. Welcome opens the article, "The Infrastructures of Liberation at the End of the World, a reflection on disaster in the Caribbean," with a reflection on the 2018 floods of the residential neighborhood of Greenvale Park, La Horquetta, Trinidad. I enjoyed the musical way Welcome described the rain, saying, "The rain tapped a gentle rhythm, and eventually the rain stopped drumming." Welcome reflected on the ways community members had to resume paying mortgages to the government and credit payments for destroyed appliances. And Welcome launches into a reflection of the so-called post-colonial state of this locale, saying, "Thus for centuries, the Caribbean, a complex product of a long and continuous exercise in colonialism and neocolonialism, has been ceaselessly living with approaching end times without the promise of salvation and rebirth. Welcome contextualizes the apocalyptic context that animate our present moment, including the expansion of nuclear military technology, fossil fuel-driven global warming, and the growth of inequality because of neoliberal economic globalization and financialization. Welcome explains that while our fatalistic planetary future requires mobilization, there are scholars, most notably Joseph Masco, who have called attention to the way, quote, Western and mimetically Western state actors capitalize on the unyielding threat of crisis to foreclose revolutionary change. Rich man's wealth is in the city. Destruction of the poor is our poverty. Destruction of your soul is vanity. Whoa, do you hear? Do you hear? Oh, destiny. Mama, look for when you calling. Destiny. Mama, look for when you calling. I wanna rule my destiny. We are in the present, not the past. While we learn from the past, we are presently building a new world that has our whole destiny, our whole communal destiny at the forefront. At institutions like UCLA or UCLA, as I like to call it, we are fighting for a world that is just and humane. The work that we are doing cannot be undone. We are working together for change, for the better, for systems that are set up for all to succeed. For all to succeed. Now, if we take the time to listen and we take the time to embrace liberation and self-determination, we can get there. We can perhaps get to one love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Dance and praise in the Lord as I will feel alright. Keep jamming, y'all. Until next time, this has been your host, Jahmi Rock. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Jahmi Rock's Jottings. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe and hop on over to my artist page to hear some music that I hope changes the world for at least one soul. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Jahmi Rock. I look forward to sharing more musical moments with you next time. Take care and keep jamming.